Welcome to today's bolt action Tactica video. Today we're going to have a discussion about a question that actually came up in one of my vehicles, in my bolt action basic training vehicles video. And it's actually a good question. It centers around, well, why would you want to pick a specific crew quality on a vehicle, right? And aside from the morale value, the fact you have 10, 9, or 8, what's your base morale value going to be? What's really the difference? Why do you want to pay a premium for a veteran unit, or do you really want to save all those points by getting an inexperienced unit? So let's talk about some ideas or reasons you'll want to take different crew qualities. Okay. All right, so let's talk first about the actual likelihood of taking a pin. This is one of the reasons you have to kind of evaluate. The first one is, remember, when a vehicle, an armored vehicle, is hit by a weapon that has a pen value, one of two things happens based on crew quality. If it is veteran, if the pen value of the shot, in its current shot, has no way to even glance the tank and allow you to roll on the damage table, the veteran unit does not take any pins at all. Whereas an experienced unit, even though the tank cannot be damaged by the shot, an inexperienced crew will take the pin. And with a regular crew, you roll 4, 5, or 6, it ignores the pin. 1, 2, or 3, it takes the pin. So right there, now this is not going to happen much. Usually, when an opponent has, let's just say, use an anti-tank rifle as an example, +2 pen, +1 at long range, he's not going to hurt a 9+ armor even at close range. But you can still take that shot on a regular tank because it might just put a pin. 50-50 chance of putting a pin. Inexperienced, it will always put a pin, which is a big deal. Veteran, there's no point in doing it because it's not going to put a pin, right? So it could be something as simple as that. Of course, with HE rounds coming in from the top, again, higher value tanks, lower value HE rounds, if you can't hurt the tank, it won't do the D2 or D3 pins. There's on a veteran, or 50% of the time on a regular. There's some merit to that. But it's such a rare thing that it may not actually play into your decision making. So what are the other reasons? One of the greatest reasons to take anything but inexperienced, we're going to start there, going with a veteran unit instead of a regular, is if you have reserves. If you're playing reserves and your vehicles have to come in on the reserve, they have to make an order test. And those order tests, except for the U.S., are at a -1. So that means your regular troops are coming in on an 8 or less, your vet are coming in on a 9 or less. That means a veteran unit is going to be coming in 1 in 6, or is not going to come in 1 out of 6 times. The regular is going to come in a little less often, or more often than likely to fail. And of course, on a 7 or less, that means like a 55% of the chance to come on the table. Inexperienced are not likely going to be coming on that table. So I even had one friend of mine who had an inexperienced transport, because why not? They're cheaper, right? You're not expecting them to do any damage. They're just a bus. Well, that unit never made it to the table. And the unit it was carrying never made it to the table in the entire game, simply because it failed that roll. So that's one of the biggest reasons to avoid an experience and maybe take veteran, to ensure your chances of bringing them on the table. Of course, you are paying a premium. Now, let's look at the other possibility. Now, you're going to, in case of an inexperienced tank, use the tank as an example. If it's not going to go in reserve, it's not a big deal. It starts on the table. The only penalty you have to worry about really is the -1 to hit. And that could be a big deal. And with the machine guns, it's not. Because even if it's a German vehicle, you're going to have 6 shots instead of 5. You're going to hit on 1 less time. Even with a regular medium machine gun, you're going to hit, instead of hitting 4 times, you're going to hit 3 times average, right? Depending on what the roll is required. So, it's not really going to matter much. The main gun, it will. And you got to think of what you're going to want to use that for. So if you have an HE round, like an inexperienced howitzer on a tank, a vehicle, that might not be such a big deal because you're going to want to use indirect fire a lot, and inexperience doesn't affect that. Inexperience would affect direct fire. You might want to avoid direct fire. Again, it depends on what your chances are. But again, if you're shooting something in the open, if you're not shooting a small team, you're more likely to get hit than not, maybe, except for that -1. So what are your odds? Can you bring something else that's also effective and provide some additional stress to the opponent by the savings that you see on that you going inexperienced? The final thing I want to kind of talk about is just in your list building. This is not necessarily a competitive approach, I guarantee you that. But there is something to be said about grabbing more inexperienced vehicles. Again, in the case of transports, they're much cheaper. In the case of armored vehicles, they're much cheaper. You get to save points. And those points can be used to buy additional infantry units. And the more units you have on the table, or more dice you have in the bag, the more initiative you have. If you outnumber your opponent in dice, then you have a chance to act first. And even if putting one of your inexperienced units on ambush, or getting the inexperienced transport to move quickly up the table to allow a unit to disembark and do something, there is something to be said to that. But again, what matters is how you like to run your army. Do you like to play with more models or more units to get that initiative? Does inexperience really matter to you as much with vehicles? Look at the possibilities. And in all honesty, there is no one right answer. You want to take this one step at a time and approach just look at the experiences you've had. Take a look at a game that just finished. What would have happened differently if you had bought inexperienced vehicles? What would have happened differently if you bought veteran vehicles? What are the odds, kind of? How would things change? And then make your decision based on those factors. From where I sit, I tend to favor going with regular on all vehicles. The only time I want to go with a veteran vehicle is likely when it's going to be open-topped. Now this is where things get really, I'm going to use the word dicey, sorry for that pun, but an open-top vehicle is vulnerable to regular small arms fire. They can take pins, and you're going to want to shed those pins more readily, and you want that morale bonus of a veteran unit to kind of shave off the effects of the pins or stave them off for a bit. Rolling a 9 or less because it has one pin is likely to get rid of the pin and allow you to fire and do some effective things, especially with something like an M10, which gives you a super heavy anti-tank gun and if you have it, the pinto-mounted heavy machine gun. Get a lot of fire going out there. Even with one pin, you're likely to overcome that and do some damage. You have 2 pins, well, now you're down to an 8 or less, and you'll end up with a 1-pin modifier for shooting. That's still better than possibly a 7+ and having 1. So, and of course, you never want to deal with in my opinion, you never want to deal with a inexperienced open-top vehicle because it's just going to get pinned and not really be effective. So these are some of the factors to consider. If you have other reasons of taking one crew quality over another, mention that below. Let's, again, as a community, discuss these tactical concepts and choices and see what we can do to offer advice to other players. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.